Well, I was thinking about starting my day with a little hike in the park, but I didn't bring a rain jacket and I don't really want to deal with it. So we're going to hang out for a little bit and then go to Abraham Lincoln's cottage. This is what our little park looks like. And I think the crazy part is I'll show you what the exit looks like. So it's currently 8:08, and when we get to the exit, you can see what that looks like because it is dramatically different. 3 minutes later, we have exited the park and we're on the main road, and it's like an industrial park, and the light's about to turn green, and here we go, boy. Interestingly, this restaurant was in like an office building at the University of Maryland. It had really good reviews, and everything in there was like Korean themed, but it was like also just like a normal breakfast restaurant. And I got a burrito, and she got some avocado toast. We'll let you know how it is. And look amazing. Are you excited? Lincoln's Cottage. It's very pretty. Can't wait. Not allowed to take videos inside the cottage, but I'll get some good ones on the outside.
No, actually direct living descendants of Abraham Lincoln. His son Robert
Lincoln House, or cottage. So some backstory on the cottage. While we run to the car in the rain. They stayed here as a summer home from April to October, all 4 years during the presidency, because Mary didn't want everybody to see her grieving in DC. This was and is a retirement home, and it was back then as well. Before Lincoln moved here, the soldiers stayed here as their retirement home within the cottage until the real retirement home was built, and then afterward it became a retirement home for female soldiers. And things like the Emancipation Proclamation were written there instead of at the White House, and he used to entertain all sorts of guests from all over the world there. Good time. Thanks for coming with me on what I'm calling 2025 rainy run. It does not smell great in this car for some reason. There's a mystery smell. Next stop, we're going to try to see the World War I memorial. It looks like there's just like street parking right in front of it. It's a small memorial that we're just going to walk around for a couple seconds. So if we can't make it there, we're going to skip it and go straight to Theodore Roosevelt Island, which will be our stop after. World War I memorial. Not allowed to park until after 6:30 p.m. in front of it. Didn't feel like getting a parking lot just to walk around one memorial. Theodore Roosevelt Island, closed. Zoo, $40 to park, and it's kind of too late in the day, so we didn't want to spend the money on that just to be there for a couple hours. So, Fort Reno. We made it to Fort Reno. Well, we're here in the Fort Reno Park. It's not that big. It's not that exciting. This is the whole park, yeah. That you didn't even know we were in the park. This is the highest point in the park, which if you know, you know. This is the highest point in DC. So another territory high point down. I don't remember how many I have left to go. This many. But there's another one. We did it. I kind of expected and hoped this park would be more grand than it is, so it's not. And we're gonna head out now and go to the next dimension. 409 feet above sea level. Just know there has to be another smoothie stop at the Wawa. Heck yeah. Stop is another part of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Park, which is where we camped at for the first night. We're heading over there because there's a cool waterfall overlook, and I think that would call it a proper visit to the park. It's really just a series of locks and aqueducts that were built a really long time ago, but I mean, they all kind of look exactly the same, so we'll see a few of the locks at the waterfalls. So that'll be fun. After leaving Fort Reno, we were going to go to the Great Falls Park. On the way, or not Great Falls Park, but the Ohio and Chesapeake thing. I think I talked about it. We got there, closed. So then, now we drove another 45 minutes to Manassas, I think I'm saying that right, National Battlefield Park. Roads open, visitor centers closed. So we're going to do the same thing we've done on the other two battles of Manassas. One was in 1861, the other was in 1862. Where we're standing is a vulnerable artillery line that was first held by the Union, and then it traded back and forth. And at the end of the first battle, it was held by the Confederates. Once again, very scenic here, very nice. This is the Henry House. Unfortunately, there was an old 84-year-old bedridden woman inside, and her daughter, whenever the fighting broke out, they didn't think anybody was here, so the Union bombed the crap out of this house to keep the Confederates out of it while they were both inside. And believe it or not, they died. This is what the house looked like after the war. And there's their graves. Poor guys. Didn't stand a chance. So, from our last stop at Matthews Lane, the Federals pushed them out here to Hamptons Lane, where we're now standing. And everything was looking very bad for the Confederates. But somehow, we know already that they turned it around. So we're going to find out how. This is all the first battle. There were 2 battles. This was the Robinson House. It got involved in the war 2 times during both battles here. And whenever Mr. Robinson filed his claim to the government to get paid back, he actually did get half of the claimed money he asked for, which is cool, I guess. It's an interesting thing. That's what it used to look like. Confederates were pushed back to about this point when reinforcements showed up and gave them a new amount of confidence. And we're about to walk over to their cannon encampment behind us. There, where they muscled up 13 cannons with fresh horses and recruits. There they are, the big guns. All 13 of them. I didn't count, so there might not all actually be 13 of them. And more importantly, information. So here at the trees, there were 2,500 Virginians at the ready to attack whenever the Confederates came over the ridge, led by Mr. General Thomas J. Jackson of the Confederates. Another general saw him, and he said, "Wow, look at Jackson up there. He stands there like a stone wall." And that's where the name Stonewall Jackson came from. It was right here. Reinforcements were hiding here once, and all of a sudden, over the hill, right there, 2 Union cannons showed up. They were all very worried, and then the Union cannons fired on those cannons over there instead of them. What happens next? They probably went and charged. I spoke over there when I was talking about the people hiding in the trees. They were actually talking about these 2 cannons. And, funny enough, there was an argument about whether or not those were the enemies over there. So the enemies slowly walked up, leveled their muskets, and then fired on these guys and took over the position within like a minute. But, as you'll soon find out, Old Sudley Road, there were more Union troops on their way. Check these birds out. So, over at Chin Ridge, which is a ways away, the Confederates finally beat back the Union and caused them to run their little butts to the capital. There were 5,000 casualties, 900 deaths, and it was the largest battle ever for the United States at that time, and it was relatively small compared to what was to come. The larger battle that happened here was the second battle, and we're now going to do the driving tour that discusses that. A bit of a road closure, but that's the Brewer House, and this is the spot where the second Battle of Manassas began. We'd get out and walk, but that's really far, and we don't have too much time before it gets dark, so we're going to move on to the stop number 2. It was a strategic area for Union cannon placements to return fire against the Confederates, but they both fought over this hill and traded it back and forth a few times. Here at the Stone House, which was a tavern and hotel. It was at the crossroads of 2 important junctions then, as it is now when you look out and see all the people on their commute. And it stood through both the first and the second battle here. The second battle contained 95,000 men. That's incredible. There's so many people here fighting. In front of us is the railroad cut that never actually got finished apparently, where the Confederate Army held for a 2-mile long line of 25,000 men, and they fought very, very hard, and the Union never actually took this line from them. This church, which is much bigger these days, was a Union hospital, and there were quite a few troops that couldn't be moved after the battle was over, and this is the second battle. And the Confederates ended up taking them all as prisoners. It's still a part of the unfinished railroad, and the Union came down here to distract the Confederates while they had a mass of troops moving towards Gainesville to their flank. So they did something super weird for the time, which was a bayonet charge. And it worked surprisingly well until the reinforcements that were supposed to come help never showed up. Deep Cut, which is the deepest section of the unfinished railroad up ahead of us. The Union were up, or sorry, the Confederates were up on the ridge with those cannons from our second stop and firing down on the Union. The Confederates were super well entrenched in this position, so the Union had to resort to going so far as throwing rocks at them because they got so close, but were eventually decimated and forced. There are 500 Confederate graves in this cemetery. They were moved here in 1867 after the war had calmed down, and there's only 2 known grave sites of Confederate soldiers in here, and they both have a headstone. The Union that died here were buried at Arlington National Cemetery, which we learned today. A little fun fact about Arlington. Arlington is actually at General Lee's former property. They started by burying the Union soldiers at the retirement home / Lincoln Cottage area that we went to earlier today, and they had space for around 6,000 graves there. Once that filled up, as a big middle finger to Lee and a constant reminder of what the Confederates were doing, they started burying at Arlington, which was right behind Lee's house and actually part of his property. They just took it from him and said, your family gets to live with this now forever. And that's how Arlington National Cemetery became a thing. Monument for the New York 5th Regiment. They were all up here while the battle at the Deep Cut was happening, and it got very quiet all of a sudden, and they were kind of worried. About 15 minutes later, thousands of Confederate soldiers were coming out of those woods and firing on them, and their unit suffered more men killed in this battle than any unit throughout the entire Civil War. They had 123 men die within 10 minutes, which is just crazy. They had no idea it was coming. They actually thought they were going to make it throughout the whole day without being in a battle up until that happened. This is Chin Ridge. It's where the Union staged their final defensive line as they prepared to make a retreat to get out of here, because they were getting their butts handed to them despite showing up with 65,000 troops in the beginning compared to the Confederates' 30,000. They just had the tactical advantage when it came to ground on the Confederate side. So this is where it all ended. 2-story farmhouse here, old plantation, relatively small inside, but they did have slaves. And this sentence right here: they returned to find their house stained with blood and their well fouled by amputated limbs. It was a scene familiar to many local residents whose homes stood in the crosshairs of combat. Is a crazy sentence. That would be a real bad day to come back to that. I guess it'd be a real bad day to live through this time anyway. This is the old stone bridge that they used to cross this little river and get into the battle. After the first battle, the Confederates destroyed the bridge, and then after the second battle, the Union put in a temporary wooden bridge, and on their retreat they destroyed it on the way out. This bridge dates to 1864. You know me, I just gotta walk across it because that sounds cool. So here's some views from the little river. Apparently, this does not look so formidable right now, but apparently it gets pretty wild during the rainy season. Nice view this way. That's the modern bridge. That's going to be our final stop for this park. I'm not sure what the next one is, but we'll see you there. Most important stop of the day, the Mediterranean Oven. We just have to pass through this Subaru. What do you think about that?
It looks like an everything bagel.
Sweet dumpling things. We got the most important part, the baklava. Are you dying? Are you dying to try some?
Yes.
Aside from the food at the wedding, that was definitely the best meal we've had. And if you count our amazing breakfast this morning, all in all, this is the best food day we've had on this trip, which is crazy. And it wasn't that expensive. For the two of us with a tip and tax and everything, it was $40. Good morning. We're in the Prince William Forest Park. I'm going to do a little 4-mile hike this morning. It's one of those weird parks that's kind of like a state park, but it's run by the National Park Service, so it's technically a national park. I have low expectations for this trail, but hopefully I'm wowed and amazed, because it is pretty out here in the woods. It's cold this morning. This tree fell over. That was a nice little hike. Nothing too noteworthy. Next stop, George Washington's House by the visitor center to see if I could get a brochure. Guess what? I could. I like to collect those. I've got well over 200 of them sitting at my desk at home. This is one of the few parks on this trip that has actually put the brochures outside during the close. So whoever's working here at Prince William, thanks. We made it to Mount Vernon. Based on the amount of people here and the amount of tour buses and everything, I feel like this is more like Disneyland than a historic site. So that's interesting. Because I'd like to see the whole thing. But we're gonna bail. The reason we're skipping it is because I'll be back here at some point. So if I'm gonna pay the money, which is like $30 per person to go see it, I'd like to actually see it, not just a little bit of it plus the museum. Took a little detour. Apparently I had forgot to include some stuff on my map of places to go, or my list of places to go. So we're at the Fort Washington Park. It's closed, and all of the people are parking in front of the no parking sign. We went and turned down a different street and parked where there is no parking signs. So after a little walk down the entrance road, we're actually getting into the park now. I don't know what that is, but we're about to learn. Bill and I went on a trip last November talking about the coastal defenses of the United States. This is one of the few coastal forts that got modernized, so this is one of the battery defenses that's obviously fallen into disrepair after probably World War I. Looks like you got a little like gun nest, which is interesting. Coastal defenses. Arguably one of the biggest wastes of money that we ever had, because they were really only used in the Civil War to defend ourselves against ourselves. There it is, Fort Washington. It was actually here before the War of 1812, but during the War of 1812, so we're stationed right about here on the Potomac. The British came in there, landed right there, and then burned down the White House. So almost worked. This fort ended up getting destroyed during that war, actually. And then it was rebuilt again in 1824. And then it was the only fortification protecting this area. In 1824, the cannons had a range, whole circle, so a strategic location and all that. And then during the 1890s, they got all sorts of upgrades like the battery we just looked at a minute ago. But they're all scattered down there. Unfortunately, and obviously, well, drawbridge is up, so the fort is closed, can't go in, but we can enjoy the view and move on to our next stop, because we kind of know all about these forts already, and I'll put a little link to the video where we learned all about them. We drove over to Piscataway Park, to one of the landings. I'm pretty unimpressed. There's some people here fishing, some people here absolutely blazing it up. And that's about it. Found the sign. This is looking way nicer than the last one. It's very interesting. The visitor center is actually open. This park is the biggest comeback story I've ever seen in my life. The visitor center was run by a foundation. That's why it's still open. It was small. I got a postcard and a park brochure, which I'm excited about. And now we're going out to the fishing pier in the Potomac. Nice little park. There's a little garden back there. A little cabin thing here. Ladies and gentlemen, the cabin's actually open. And the doorway isn't tall enough for me. Wow. And apparently you can go out to the garden. It's looking kind of sad right now, but it is you know, fall. That's the old tobacco barn. And then this is the Enthobiotic garden, full of native plants and pollinators. We walked over to the barnyard. There's not much here in the barnyard, other than some chimkin. Let's see, let's check out the little rooster guys. Bakak. Bakak. They're big. That's good. We also got Mr. Tomas. Thomas Turkey. It's almost Thanksgiving, boys. Your time to shine. We got one of the sheep. Look at him. He wants me to pet him, but we're not allowed to go in there. And then over there's a cow in there somewhere. He mooed at us. We didn't think there was anything in here. It freaked us out. The proper wildlife now, boys. He's talking up a storm. Let's see.
Hey!
The sheep is making all sorts of noise in there because he's like, pay attention to me. Oh, he's gone. Look at this big boy. Hi, big boy. Hello. My goodness.
Oh, you are pretty.
He's
A pretty
gigantic.
cat.
Those two vultures were circling above us to try to get the cat when we started to walk. I have no idea that you were about to die. I walked back over here and it seemed to have scared the birds away. But now they look like they're coming back in this direction, so I'm going to wait here. Make sure Mr. Kitty guy or girl makes it out of this. We got some bull here too.
Oh my god.
Look at him. He's so cute. We should go pet him. We did it. We made it to Point Lookout. It was a long ferry ride from the Capitol Waste, but Tobar got us here safe. I've, quote, gotta get you a picture of the sailboat. This may be the lamest lighthouse I think I've ever seen. It's just sticking out of the top of the building. The one in the game is way cooler. So in case you haven't picked this up, the references are to the video game Fallout 3 and the Point Lookout thing. You should play that game if you haven't. It's a great game. I don't care if you don't like video games. Unfortunately, the inside of the lighthouse closed at 3 o'clock every day, which is kind of sad because online it's at 5. But it's okay. This wharf used to stick out 250 feet back in the day for both passengers and cargo to come into Point Lookout, as well as the lighthouse tenders. Over there, the land that you can see, that's Virginia, because this over here is actually the outlet for the Potomac River on its way to DC. When you look out that way on the opposite side, that's the Atlantic Ocean. This shed was for coal storage. This shed was for buoy repair. This is an example of a buoy from the 1960s. Very similar to the ones that we still use today. The sign lied to me because that says 1956, not 1960. This World War II era picture was kind of cool. The Point Lookout lighthouse tender was the one fixing all the old buoys. People would go out into the bay and they'd use the little rail car here, and then he'd scrape off all the old paint, do any repairs, repaint it, and the next day they'd come back, pick it up, and then set it back out. And it was just like a guy here doing it all by himself. Just kidding about that being the Atlantic Ocean. That's the Potomac. I was right about that. And then that is the Chesapeake Bay. And then that's Delaware. You ever been to Delaware?
I don't know. Have I?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have a lighthouse, but from the other side. This place is actually really cool. Well, there have been many shipwrecks out here, including a submarine. Over 4,000. And there's a dramatic illustration. Point Lookout also had ties to the Civil War. What those ties were, not 100% sure. I just know in the video game that you could find the hats. So we're gonna learn all about it today. Let me tell you what. The Union. And they had one heck of an amount of fortifications out here. This was also a hospital down here. And then this was a prison out here. Interestingly, the whole peninsula is like shifted over as time has gone on, so all of this is like underwater now. During the War of 1812, the British occupied Point Lookout. That's interesting. I learned about this little innovation back in November as well. They made this little L-shaped thing to protect from cannon fire, and they used everybody's favorite anti-explosion material, dirt. they had this earthwork built all around. I wonder if they ever got attacked here. That'd be interesting. So, we have officers' quarters, soldiers' barracks, and the guard tower. They all kind of look the same inside, so I'm going to take you into the soldiers' barracks so you can really experience what it was like to be a soldier back in the Civil War for the Union, just hanging out with the boys in the barracks. Here we are. A small bug was in my face. Lots of barracks. Got a handprint on the stove. Somebody made a mistake. Burnt their skin right off. Gun rack in the middle. Mess table. All that. Most importantly, coolest thing I think is the map. The map kind of describes it great. So that's our entrance. Barracks, officers' quarters, guard shack. And then there's these gun platforms. There, and there, where they place these types of cannons. And if you look right there, gun platform. We're standing on gun platform. Across the way, gun platform. So they literally just built a fort out of dirt, and it was probably stronger than half of the forts from the 1812 era where they built all the coastal forts. This is a partial reconstruction of the prison camp. It was designed to hold 10,000 people at max. At one point in 1865, it had 22,000 in it. A total of 52,000 prisoners passed through the gates, and 4,000 died here, where a ton others also died after the war due to diseases and things that they picked up while they were here. We even have a little post office here for them. They had a prison store. It's a happening place. They had one of those luxe glamping Airbnb style resorts for them. Ignore the fact that they weren't feeding them or the weather was really bad and the shelter was really bad. It was a great time. Don't think about it. They've got these little white posts. The deadline is where the walls would have been. This extended all the way out, all the way down there, all the way into where the ocean is now, the Chesapeake Bay is now. Hopped on over to the opposite side. We're still within the walls of the former camp. There's a fishing pier out here, so you'll see that. But holy moly, was that a big prison camp. Look at this thing. It goes out to the end of the pier. You can tell this island really wants to disappear with how much man-made rock wall there is, just keeping it around. The sun is very bright. The pier, which is basically where the end of that prison camp would be. And it's real far out there. And I gotta say, Point Lookout, nothing like Fallout 3, but a damn good time. 10 out of 10 would recommend. That sunset view, we got it bouncing off the lighthouse, looking great. We just booked the same campsite that we stayed in last night at Prince William Park because it's really close to our first stop for tomorrow as well. Hell yes, brother. We have achieved sunset, boys. Look at these clouds. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Good times. Yeah. Food. At the Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania National Military Park. We are at the visitor center, which is obviously closed, especially because it's super early in the morning. And we're gonna do a driving tour. Yay! There's a mansion. It's called Chatham Mansion, and we can't go to it because it's closed. But that is where the Union Army first got here back in the good old days. And they were trying to build bridges across the river so all their troops could cross, because they were doing this in December. And the plan was to surprise the Confederates with a little surprise attack. And as they were building the bridges, the Confederates had known that they were here, so they staged all throughout the town. And whenever the engineers were building the bridges, the Confederate snipers were shooting at them. So the Union ended up crossing the river with a bunch of boats to just send some soldiers over here, and then they went door to door through every single house and cleared them all out in urban warfare style, which wasn't really a thing during this war, which is interesting. And then they finally got their bridges built, but they lost their element of surprise. And that's how the Battle of Fredericksburg kicked off. It's Telegraph Hill, otherwise known as Lee's Hill now. This is where the Confederates had their lookout. so they could see the entire town of Fredericksburg and watch every move that the Union was doing and form their defensive positions based on that information. There's not much to see there, apparently, during the springtime, when all, or not springtime, but anything but winter, whenever all the leaves are on the trees, because you can't see anything. But in the winter, you have a bird's eye view. So here, there was a Confederate line, and the Union commander was sending his troops up here to fight them. But apparently he didn't try hard enough and send enough people, so he lost the battle for this hill. And he ended up getting fired from the United States military after that, after a committee heard and said that he didn't follow the very vague orders well enough that he received. I've never heard a bird sound like this before. What could it be? So inevitably the Union ends up losing this battle, but you could tell here how we've got the wood line, some earthworks built up, and then the cannons in the trees. They had these cannons hidden, and so even despite the Union being a way stronger force, because you just couldn't see them, the Confederates would wait for them to get real close, and then they'd fire their cannons because they didn't want to give their positions to Union artillery far away, and they ended up holding them back. They were very excited, and then the Union troops felt like they were pawns because it was for some political agenda, and overall a pretty bad battle for the North. We left Fredericksburg, and we have now made it to the Battle of Chancellorsville. This used to be the site of a house that was destroyed during the war. The Union Army attempted to take Chancellorsville in April of 1863, so about 4 months after the last battle in Fredericksburg. And this is the battle where Stonewall Jackson was killed accidentally by his own troops. Or at least injured. I don't know if he was killed. I think he was injured by his own troops. The Chancellor's House site. The Union Army held around here, and they patiently waited so that way the Confederates would come attack them on their turf rather than staying in their own defensive positions. And the plan was working. This battle and the Union's defeat here ended up being a catalyst for Gettysburg. After leaving, General Lee decided that it was now time to take the battle to the northern front and kicked off what ended up being the battle at Gettysburg. We moved on to the third battle that happened here after Gettysburg. The Union came down and once again tried to take this area. This area is called the Battle of the Wilderness. This field was a spot of a lot of battling. It used to be twice as long. It was very disorganized because of the trees, and they were like, both sides were preparing for battle very near to each other and had absolutely no idea what the other one was doing because they just couldn't get through the forest. The tuning farm, once again, another spot where the United States' orders kind of screwed them. They had this is the high ground, the best spot to manage both intersections of roads that they were fighting over, and the guy who was here and had control of it was ordered to send his troops down to help with the offensive to take one of the intersections, which they ended up losing, and then General Lee took the high ground and had a way stronger foothold in the area. Their regrettable decisions, the Union was actually pretty handily kicking the crap out of the Confederates, and when night fell, the Union repositioned, reorganized, and got ready to really hammer them the next day. And the Confederates did nothing because they thought reinforcements were on the way, but they were not. So when the morning came, the Confederates were handily getting beaten, and it just so happened that a brigade of Texans were coming up the road, and General Lee, there he is, ordered them to attack the Union, and a ton of them died in the process, but it did start to work, and he was so worried about it that he went with them into battle until he was forced to turn around by the Texans because they didn't want to lose another general here like they did with Stonewall Jackson the year prior. Was the intersection that was very important for the Union to keep, and they did. They ended up winning this battle. However, apparently a ton of the woods caught on fire, and the people that were wounded in the fighting burned alive rather than getting any sort of medical attention. Driving for a couple hours and ensuring that my bladder was absolutely filled to the brim, we have made it to Monticello. 1820 document of the Declaration of Independence.
A declaration by the representatives.
We're in the cellar. Not allowed to do video in the main house when we do our tour, but we can take pictures, so enjoy the upcoming slideshow when that comes around. They brewed beer here. He was a big alcohol enjoyer.
Is it 210 or 220?
It's the shit. It's the thing. The thing that I was pronouncing wrong. It's actually called Monticello, even though there's no H.
Jefferson died.
I don't think I explained, but this is Thomas Jefferson's house. It took him forever and then some to actually build it because he didn't really care until he retired and actually lived here. Lots of fun, interesting Thomas Jefferson facts, but I think one of the most interesting ones is that from his house, through the trees that used to not exist, you could see the University of Virginia, which is the school that he created. He also does that pesky Declaration of Independence thing, and he did religious freedom in Virginia, where he was the governor. And apparently he didn't really care about being president because he didn't even put that on his headstone as an accomplishment. And he designed his own headstone. And there's this cool sundial with the Blue Ridge Mountains off in the background. I thought it was pretty neat. Also a kind of interesting thing, he was like against slavery but owned more slaves, 600 in his lifetime, than any other United States president. And when people would ask him about it, he would basically just go, that's a problem for the next generation. I'm just here trying to make ends meet. We went to the guy's gravesite, the guy being Thomas Jefferson, who, after taking the slavery tour, I think less of. I got a little museum. It's pretty neat. My favorite is to whittle glasses. Just to whittle glasses. So we found out that Thomas Jefferson also has another house. So we're like, oh hey, we could do that tomorrow because it's like on our way and all that. So I was like, yeah, there's not many good campgrounds, so we'll probably get a hotel tonight. The hotels were all over $250 a night for like really crappy ones, and like a decent one like a Holiday Inn Express was over $300. So here's our campground. It's at a restaurant and we're gonna go get some food. They're having an Oktoberfest thing. Large cider. We got the schnitzel, the cider, and the pulled pork. You excited?
Yeah.
So we're going to get some biscuits, but we didn't hit a deer. A deer hit us. We were coming at it. For some reason, my foot missed the brake pedal when I saw it. So I did a little not swerve, but like slowly went onto the grass next to it at like 15 miles per hour while I was still on the brakes. And you can kind of see there's like a streak, and then it's hair, and then some hair. But the car made it completely unscathed. So lucky. It looks bald. We've got a bit of extra time, so I saw this little monument thing. So I figured we'll come check it out. So you got this guy. Fountain's empty. Dang. So it's about World War I. And then I'm gonna climb up the stairs and see what I can see. A little building up there. A little church. Bigger church, and the Lynchburg Museum, which we are not visiting today, but it looks cool. And back down we go. On each set of stairs, there's another monument for another war. So the top was the Civil War, and then as we go down, we've got the Vietnam War. And then this one's for POWs. And then we've got the Korean War. And then World War II, which is actually on both sides. And then at the bottom, we had World War I, which you've already seen. This is the building next to it, but I just love the like Art Deco 1931 inscribed in the side of it. We have arrived at Poplar Forest, and we got a little tour going on in about 20 minutes. Exciting times. I'm gonna check all the little window exhibits first.
We went the excavation to kind of find out exactly.
This is what it looked like after the fire, before it was restored. Well, sort of. There's their process. This is the basement. This is the wine cellar. It's the presidential pooper. You had to go down one heck of a staircase to get to it. This house has given me some design inspiration for when I someday build my own house. I want an octagonal house that looks just like this. I even figured out how I'd do the floor plan. So, I got a new sweater. Bought it at REI, North Carolina. You didn't see that. That doesn't matter. We're now in South Carolina. Long drive. We're at the Kings Mountain National Military Park. And we are going to... And this national park is about the Revolutionary War as opposed to the Civil War. Thomas Jefferson called this the turning point in the Revolutionary War, where we were finally starting to beat the British. There is a 1.5 mile trail that will take us around, tell us all about the battle, and as far as I can tell, that's the only thing there is to do in this park. So we're gonna go do it, and you're gonna come along for the ride. I played a prank on myself. We made it like a 1/10 of a mile on this very rocky, crappy trail, and my mom said, I'm not doing this. And I said, all right, well, I'm gonna go learn about the battle. And I walked for a little while longer, and I started thinking, I was like, I feel like there'd be a sign or something talking about the battle at this point. And then I looked it up on my phone, a little map of the maps, and it was the other way. It's a paved path. So I'm walking out of the woods now to try to actually go find the correct battlefield trail. Let's go, me. This is a 1 hour long battle that involved 1,000 American loyalists. And the trail is around the base of Patriot Mountain. The park is technically closed. And we're doing it anyway. Because it was technically closed and now it's technically double closed, which means that it's open. Apparently back in the olden days, the trees were much bigger and there was way less undergrowth, which allowed them to do the fighty a lot more effectively against the British who were at the open mountaintop. Apparently, all the people who were fighting here, all the young men, were very local to the area, and they knew this mountain because at the top, the clear spot was actually a deer hunting camp. The night before the battle, it had rained a bunch, so when the hundreds of American troops came in, they were absolutely silent because the ground was covered in wet leaves. And then, starting around here, this is where the battle started to break out. The American line was kind of in front of this path that we're working on, and up atop the hill were where the British were. They took after what the Indians were doing at the time, and they would fight like they did, hiding behind trees and yelling to distract them, putting out a shot and then running to the next tree and hiding. And people didn't really fight wars like that back in the Revolutionary War. So it seemed like it was shockingly effective given that they won this battle and, you know, the war. Apparently, it came as a surprise to everyone that the hunters from this part of the world were actually able to defeat real trained soldiers. It took them 3 tries. They kept getting chased down by the British men at the top with their 17-inch long bayonets. But eventually, they managed to pull it off. So, up ahead here is the ridge. This is where the first attack from the Patriots happened on the British. And as the British charged at them with their bayonets, a lot of them turned, ran back. A man named William said, "Return to battle, yada, yada, yada." And the guys were like, "Shit, okay." So they went back. And, you know the rest. So, apparently the people that have been calling British, that the signs have been calling Tories, those were American loyalists to the crown. And they had been training for X number of years. The war had been going on for 6 years at this point. They kind of hoped to end it here. Obviously that didn't happen. And they lost. It's interesting. Kind of reminds me of Fort 96 from the last time we were out around this way. That's down in Georgia, so a little ways from here. But that was kind of like where everything ended. This is saying that even during this battle, some of the redcoats at the top switched sides to the American side because they recognized the people coming up the hill as their like friends and neighbors and realized that maybe they didn't want to be on the side that they were on. So American prisoners taken by the British were executed. But when the Americans were taking the British prisoners, they actually showed mercy and didn't do that, which is, I think, pretty cool of them. Down in this valley where this monument is, that's where the British's camp was, and they eventually got pushed down here with a, quote, hail of bullets coming down after them. And just one more video, because this monument is pretty dang cool. Major Ferguson, who liked to wear an unusual checkered duster, which also happened to make him a target, was killed here. Apparently 9 separate musket balls all hit him at the same time, which is crazy. After he died, another man took over command for a few minutes and then they surrendered. So, and that was on the British side, obviously. And just like that, we have done the 1.5 mile loop. And in case you're wondering why I was breathing super heavy this entire time and super sweaty, I ran from stop to stop because we got a long drive to do after this and I don't really want to get in too late. And it's a great way to stay in shape. Next stop, Cleveland, Georgia. I'm dropping my mom off. I'm not sure you'll see much from there. And then I think I might stop somewhere on the way home, but we'll find out. And then back to Utah. So it is Friday night right now, and the goal is to be home in bed Monday night. So we'll see if we can pull it. The sunset is ridiculous. Wait a bit before it when we crest this hill.